Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Today, we're going over a VR tragedy. I can't believe I let this happen. As a VR creator who's individually scored over 200 games across PCVR, Quest, and the PlayStation VR, I can't believe there's some extremely popular VR titles that I just never got around to. So we're going over my biggest shame, 15 amazing games that have been recommended to me time and time again that I just never tried or couldn't get into. I also need your help on today's video. As I go through all of today's games, please let me know which ones are absolute must-plays down in the comments. I'll pull an excuse out of my ass as to why I never played each title, but in most cases I think it just comes down to time management. Now there are of course links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead, but before we jump in, this video is brought to you by VRROCK. VRROCK makes prescription lens inserts for all of your favorite VR headsets, and now they have them for the PlayStation VR too. So if you've been struggling to get your eyeglasses to fit inside the headset, or you're afraid you might scratch the lens, these can be a great option. They magnetically connect, so they're easy to put on and take right back off. And if you're interested, I have a 10% discount code down in the description and a link to their webpage. Okay, so we'll organize this video from my least to biggest regret. First up is Res Infinite, which I've heard is absolutely excellent, and I've also seen on a couple best VR games lists. Now from a regret standpoint, it's minimal, because I've barely ever heard of this game and have no idea what it's all about. Apparently it's like a combination of Audacity meets Thumper, as you're flying through a brightly lit world, shooting down enemies while the music is pumping. I'm sure I'd enjoy this game, but it's definitely not my style like our next title, Job Simulator. I actually got this game with my original HTC Vive, and I've never played it. It just looks way too kidsy to me, and no matter how many people said it's really fun, I just couldn't do it. But apparently people love this game, and completing some mundane tasks is actually fun in a robot-filled world. Now moving on to our next title, I will say I'm definitely a bit more embarrassed about this one. I've never sat down and played a game of 11 table tennis. This game is easily one of VR's best sports simulations, and a must-have for any ping pong fan, and that right there is where our problem lies. I'm just not the biggest fan of ping pong and never felt compelled to try this title. Now a game that I was always interested in trying but maybe just not enough was virtual reality. This story-driven sci-fi fever dream that has you diving into different virtual worlds and interacting with AI is a fan favorite amongst many. With this title being over 6 years old now, it flew over my head when it originally released, and while I have been curious to check it out, obviously not enough. And another title that I wanted to check out for nostalgia reasons was Myst. I grew up loving the beautiful worlds of Myst and the head-scratching puzzles. When I saw that it was only originally planned to come to Quest though, I started to lose interest. I felt that the visual immersion would be lost on that hardware, and I just wasn't in the mood for over-challenging puzzles. I was definitely more interested when I heard it was coming to PCVR, but by that point it had already received some mixed reviews, and I forgot about this game altogether. But so far these titles have only been the tip of the iceberg for my shame. A title I get a lot of crap for not trying is RAGNAROCK. This Viking-themed virtual drummer is loved by many, but I just couldn't imagine that virtually drumming felt good, and that overall Viking theme to me looked a bit cheesy. I have come around though, and this game is waiting on my backlog, so hopefully I'll get to it soon because I love a lot of the music it features, and their recent updates look pretty damn cool. Now it's one thing for me not to play a rhythm game, but it's a completely different story for me to never try a shooter like Cosmodread. Now I'm definitely still dying to try this survival horror roguelike, but I will admit I'm a bit of a coward when it comes to VR, and I do have to work myself up for anything with a horror theme. Lately I've been playing VR more to relax, rather than get all pumped up, so the game's just been rotting away on my backlist. Similar to our next title, Rush of Blood. Now I was really late in the VR game to get a PlayStation VR, and from my perspective, Rush of Blood looked like a gimmicky, jump scare filled on-rails shooter. Now at this point I know I'm wrong here, because I thoroughly enjoyed the game's sequel on PlayStation VR 2, and everyone tells me the original was just much better. Well, unfortunately though, at this point, I'm not pulling out the original PlayStation VR just to find out. Now the next game is the first on the list that I've tried, but I just can't get into. So many people recommended that I try the hot dog murdering, gun simulator, hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. I even spoke with the developer Anton before jumping in, and while I do acknowledge the technical achievement this game is, I just don't think it's fun to actually play, and wonder why people make such a big deal about it. I spent about 2 hours trying different game modes, and ultimately I was just really bored. So go ahead and tell me what I'm doing wrong down in the comments. Now it's also a very similar situation for the hoverboarding open world of Jet Island. So many people have told me just how good this game is, and for whatever reason I just couldn't get into it. Now it's possible I didn't give this game enough of a chance, But I jumped into it, started hoverboarding around the open world, felt like overall I had no direction, and something just didn't feel right to me. But I have placed this game on my backlog list, and eventually will give it another try. Another highly recommended game sitting on my backlog is The Room VR. I missed this game when it originally released over 3 years ago, and I eventually placed it on my backlog after so many people recommended I try it, so eventually I'll jump into this story-driven, horror-themed series of puzzles. It's not exactly my style, but so many people rave about it, so I feel like I'm doing VR a disservice by not trying it. And the same goes for the Pixel Rip series. I'm pretty embarrassed to say that I never tried Pixel Rip 1995, nor have I jumped into the newest one yet, Pixel Ripped 1978. To make matters even worse, I never completed the original game in the series, so this right here is a triple fail on my part. The Inception-style game within a game that the Pixel Rip series offers up, combined with ample doses of nostalgia, is something I've been told that I have to experience. So I'm going to push this series right to the top of my backlog list, and maybe that'll help me get rid of some of my VR shame. Now our next title is definitely a big deal, but I have no shame here. I've actually spent more time modding Skyrim VR than actually playing it. After putting so many hours into the original flat screen title, both mods and the VR perspective were still not enough to get me over the fact that I was yet again playing Skyrim. Even though an RPG in VR like Skyrim is a dream come true for me, too much of a good thing is actually real, and the overall VR implementation of this title is pretty lackluster, and trying to fix it with mods got old pretty quick. But if you think not playing Skyrim in VR is pretty bad, well, I also have to sadly admit that I haven't tried one of the best horror games ever, and that's Resident Evil Village. Now to clarify, I have played this game on flat screen, but I just haven't been able to get myself to jump back in VR. I mentioned that I do have to work myself up a bit to play a horror title, and it's just not what I'm in the mood for right now. That being said though, it is pretty embarrassing for a VR content creator like myself to pass on a horror action title like Resident Evil. One day soon I'll stop being a baby, put a diaper on, and jump right into this game. And last up, my biggest regret is never trying Blood and Truth. Not only does this story-driven action title look absolutely fantastic, everyone who's played it seems to agree. Like I said previously in this video, I was really late to the game when it came to the PlayStation VR, so I definitely wasn't up to date on most titles. I totally missed this game, and unfortunately right now, I'm not willing to go back to the original PlayStation VR just to play one game. So London Studio, if you're listening, can you please give us a PlayStation VR 2 version of this game? And that right there was some of my biggest VR shame, but I do have some personal bonus titles to go over. These are games that never got the recognition I thought they deserved, or underwent some other tragedy like Silicon Rising. You probably never even heard of that game, but it was an absolutely fantastic bullet hell style shooter with amazing graphics and Time Crisis style cover-based action. They even eventually added full locomotion, some cool cutscenes, and a wide variety of missions. I had an absolute crush on this game for years while I was in early access, and then it suddenly disappeared off Steam. I have no idea what happened, and when I spoke to the developers, they claimed they weren't sure why Steam removed their title. Whatever the case may be, this is a loss to the whole VR community. Just like ROBO Recall not getting the critical acclaim that it deserved. The game has some of the best VR mechanics ever. Not only are you in wild shootouts with an array of different weapons, but you're also getting style points for killing enemies in wacky ways. Plus you could teleport up to them and rip them apart, snatch their bullets out of midair and throw them back, use their own weapons against them, and ultimately just feel like a badass. The game was absolutely fantastic, but unfortunately the Quest port wasn't that great, and only VR old-timers like myself really talk about this game. I would have loved the sequel, but it looks like at this point, it's not going to happen. And our final game that I think deserves a little bit more love is MOTHERGUNSHIP Forged. It's a truly unique and absolutely fun wave shooter with roguelike elements. Not only are you building these super wacky guns, but it also turns into pretty much a bullet hell shooter, and I love everything from the epic boss fights to the fact that you can enjoy this in co-op. If you enjoyed something like Space Pirate Trainer, you should definitely go ahead and check out this game. And that right there was today's list. If there's a hidden gem you've never heard me talk about, go ahead and let me know what it is down in the comments so I can check it out if it's another title I missed, and also feel free to make fun of me for never getting around to games like Resident Evil Village.
And that was today's video, brought to you by my dad, Mateo311. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here,
consider subscribing.
Consider
subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
We'll see you guys on next time.
We'll see you guys on next time.